Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to part 2 of Day 9 Daily number 540, where we learn to be a better gamer. And we thug snap like a boss. Upon cracking most of our knuckles, including our neck and ears, if I could crack my ears, I would. We're going to talk a little bit about the Terran versus Zerg matchup. Because in part 1, we talked a little bit about the broad idea of TVP, but specifically honed in on how do transitions work. If we're opening up Reapers, what situation does that set us up in? Things like having a lot of barracks without add-ons, or having a lot of barracks with reactor add-ons. Creates different situations. We're going to continue our exploration of transitions as we look at Mecha Jawan and Manthony, which, by the way, like, these have got to be... First of all, I love both of these players because Manthony says howdy and Mecha Jawan. His name is Mecha Jawan, and also he has a happy face. Oh, God, so good. Yeah. By the way, huge shout out to everyone who submitted games for today. It's really, really fun to get the chance to look at all sorts of games going out in your laddering things. So, Mecha Jawan, I think, is opening up in the intuitive way, which would be by building a barracks. And there it is. So, as many people have experienced with the Reaper, Reapers take a lot of gas and not a lot of minerals. So, in almost all the games I watched, people did some variation of this, where they would build a first Marine and then go into the Reaper play. They'd be adding on more barracks. In general, stack your barracks vertically rather than horizontally because it makes it easier to slam out a bunch of add-ons. But virtually everyone was doing something like this. One Marine here to do, of course, a little bit of the spotting to deny some sort of drone scout. If you're going to be doing that, I would actually put the Marine here, because the Reaper can easily just pop down and shoot things and help support that Marine if there's some sort of X pool coming up. So yeah, great. I love this transition. I think that this is fantastic. I especially like this game as an example because this is a pretty typical opening from Zerg. Early expand, double queen, go straight for Roach Warren. And in fact, in the vision, Manthony doesn't have any Zerglings. This is an opening that Azubu's Violet loves to do. Lenok does it every now and again. Life occasionally does it too. Very, 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 very popular among Dem pros to do this kind of Roach timing opening. And this is the thing that I feel like intuitively would be the death of a player who opened up with this many Reapers. This is where we start getting into the need to transition out. Right now, my intuition says, as you're moving out with this alleged death force of Reapers, and by the way, 5/6 is like the money number for Reapers, because that lets you one-shot probes slash drones SCVs. But also, this is going to pin back these roaches. And also, if we just throw down the like Tech Lab reactor, it gives us the opportunity to poke in here, to do things like this, and then to get a read on what our opponent is doing. So, for instance, oh my god, roaches. Now, Mecha Jawan does have plenty of time to build bunkers, build up the... excuse me. Build up all the defenses he needs while doing all this obnoxiousness. Theoretically, the roaches should be staying at home to defend. However, we see these roaches moving across. Now again, in theory, Mecha Jawan had plenty of time to transition earlier to Marine upgrades, Marine Marauder, that sort of thing, and didn't, and nearly dies here. So again, as you might imagine, this is the example I am selecting for the not-so-good Reaper transition thing. Sure, there were some good moments, but then we saw this sort of like, this sort of like sticky spot. But I wanted to continue on with this game because I think that the Reaper historically, the older school Reaper, was the build at the start of the game, do some stuff with it at the start of the game, and then that's it. Then you're not using it anymore. Are there mid-game situations where we can see it? Well, Mecha Jawan is literally going to be making a pretty substantial amount of Reapers for most of the game. So weirdly, delaying the layer against a Reapering player means it's a lot harder to get up expansions. Because even though these Reapers are doing a fairly low amount of damage each, you can get them just shooting so quickly that it pins you back. I say that you need a fast layer against these players because you really want some way to get speed roaches or you want speed lings, but obviously speed lings still not, or slow lings are still not quite catching up to these Reapers, and speed lings are going to have trouble with how fast these things are and the fact that they can bounce up and down cliffs. So this I thought was pretty sweet. This is the transitions that I'm talking about. Yeah, getting all the reactors. Going for all the engineering bay upgrades. I'd again like to emphasize that if we think of just resources, very early double engineering bay makes a lot of sense with Reaper-based openings because we're getting so much gas anyways to build the Reapers that we basically slam out all the add-ons, start building Marines with the minerals, and get upgrades with the gas. So, in general, but especially versus Zerg, I like the idea of like a 3 barracks open with a lot of, or 3 barracks expand, then get add-ons and 2 more barracks, and 2 engineering bays. This is going to allow you to have a really aggressive 1-1 push. Don't do this if you want to be going for a 2-2 because you want to be more economically focused if you're going for 2-2, but aggressively. I like this logic of getting these 2. And certainly still, even with all the roaches everywhere, can still get really far into the base and get a good sense of what the Zergy buddy's up to. Do I have that much more that I want to say for this game? I think it's pretty clear what I wanted to emphasize here. You know, let me just... I'm going to speed through so that we can get to the late stage. I'll even move ahead a little bit. What's most notable about the damage change for the Reaper is that the Reaper is I think, strictly worse in a big army composition. It really does not work well. The old Reaper, the Wings of Liberty Reaper, actually was not bad in a big army composition. For instance, in extremely late game Terran vs. Protoss, Thorzane was known for incorporating speed Reapers into his play because they eliminate zealots so quickly, and you can have them go up and kill buildings really quickly. But as we end up seeing in this game, this is way down the line where we're seeing Mecha Jawan continue to harass with Reapers. It's interesting to note that even with the popularity of Roach Hydra coming back because of the speed, that the Reapers are still super frickin' annoying. This would be excellent for at any stage game harassment, sort of as like a... This is almost a replacement medevac. Again, micro's good. But back home, the Reapers are just not really dealing as much damage. Sure, if you have like a huge number of units in general, you're going to win. But that game, for me, was a useful look at... Dude, I will never know why every now and again StarCraft mutes my microphone. I will never know, but that's fine. I should be back now. I feel bad for me, genuinely. Good now? I'm just gonna make sure. Should be fine now. Alright, excellent. But yeah, what I briefly noted about that last game is it showed an opportunity to do an opening against what seemed like the perfect counter. A guy opening roaches. Ugh. But we still have a nice opportunity to transition out. Seems good. I like it. This game was perhaps the most elegant example of really well thought out transitions against Zerg with Reaper. In this game, we're going to see HotS start off by building himself an early supply depot and going straight away for a proxy barracks. When we look at Wayland, which is one of my favorite corporations, he's going for the standard, oh so standard, 15 hatch, and following it up with a 14 pool. However, without the need to build that 25-second tech lab, we can get Reaper production started right a frickin' way. Here is our very early pool. Very, very, very early pool. And HotS can still do some really suave Reaper harassment. Here's going to go down the bunker right away. Poking in here. Queens are actually just now getting started. Part of me feels like something might end up changing down the line, because this looks quite difficult to deal with, but still, I loved this game out of HotS, because this doesn't destroy Zerg. This just poses a big problem for Zerg early on. Meanwhile, back in the main base, HotS is doing smart things like building the depot, continuing to build SCVs, stockpiling Decash. Queens and Zerglings show up, HotS micros as best he can, Now, I want you to think about what is the best transition out of this. Certainly, you can already see part of this, the transition into the command center. But what is the optimal way to pop out of this? Especially given that we're pretty sure these Reapers are going to stay alive for a little bit. One thing I do want to note is that a Reaper, when does the Reaper heal? It says it regenerates life while out of combat. That just means if it's not taking damage, it'll heal. Because, for instance, this Reaper that's in the bunker and firing away will actually start to heal. So, there it is, healing itself. It's totally in battle, it's just not taking damage. God, my chair is particularly squeaky today. My apologies. So, while this is not going to kill the Zerg by any means, it's not like with when Reapers used to be able to throw grenades and you are on the verge of winning the game immediately. But back home, we see HotS has walled himself in. We see that factory is going down, and soon enough we're going to see a starport. And I'm sure many of you will notice this. Pulls back, he can salvage that, and yet he elects not to, until the last second, where he forgets. Following it up with a Hellion Banshee play. And actually you can build another command center right now if you want to. There's Wayland saying that seems balanced, and it certainly sounds balanced to me. HotS with the frowny face, and this barracks can now be used to scout. There's the add-on getting ready to build a Banshee. I think HotS is even a little bit surprised that he has this much money. And then I thought this was super, super sick. Builds the command center and 2 supply depots as a wall off for command center 3. Oh, so badass. In the meantime, HotS is just trying to deny the 3rd, which would be the exact goal of the Hellion Banshee. In this position as well. So it's sort of like a bolstered Hellion Banshee, where Hellions also have a move speed of 4.25, whereas these have a move speed of 3.75, so suddenly these are moving at about a comparable speed. Isn't this awesome? Doesn't this make you want to do this strategy, where you open up one Rax, harass him really hard, and then just transition into the ultra standard normal look. Here's the factories going down, the transition into mech, the double armory going down. All the normal techniques to deal that damage. Gotta be a little careful not to lose the Banshee. But we can even hop up into the main base and have something like the Reaper Banshee harass the main base. I think it's an upgraded version of the old Hellion Banshee. Waylon has $1 million in the bank. He doesn't have any dudes mining gas. He's had too much to do. Sidus is awesome. And gets a little overeager, a common trope among Hellion Bansheeing players, and throws away everything else that he has. But this, for me, was one of those striking instances of, oh, there's actually not too much insanity going on. He's not going for like mass Reapers, just some, and yet it's putting him into this just freaking gorgeous position. Continuing to re-wall off. Sidus actually playing just super well. Only thing I can really criticize is the sort of whiffing of the upgrades on the back. And of course some of the whiffing in these battles. Is there anything else to note? Nah, he's transitioning into mech. Clean, swift, easy transition into mech. And being a jerk. And lifting. And dying. But once again, the Reapers do not have only an early game utility, which I think is quite cool, because most of the time, mech play is quite immobile and can't really do anything right now. Sure, you can move out with the Hellions, but oftentimes it's hard to get into difficult places, but Reapers have much better mobility than the Hellions because they can cliff hop. But I kind of want to pull it back to this idea of transitions over time. One of the most important things with whatever units you get or whatever buildings you get is to make sure it makes sense now, later, and for as much longer for the rest of the game as possible. So so it all begins with Sidus saying, I want to open up with a really early Reaper. How does that help now? Obviously, I can deal direct damage to him. I can hurt him. However, we can also get up an early expand, get up this transition into this mix that we already wanted. Hellion Banshee. Okay, cool. How does it help for that then, for that later part? Combines with the Hellion Banshee mixture to form a Reaper Hellion Banshee, which means that we can continue to pressure him at the front, and we can even do things like have the Reaper Banshee go into the main, instead of just the Banshee go into the main. Really versatile in that mid-game. And then in the late game, if we're going mech, the Reapers still have utility to be able to spot out expansions, to get us some coverage, and to get some map control. I actually think that this Reaper, despite not really doing a lot of damage, has so much utility. So much freaking utility. I think that's cool. I question its use in the Marine Maraudering case against Zerg, especially. I don't think that'll be quite as strong. I totally lost my train of thought. Yeah, all right. Yeah, can't remember what I was saying. Nice. Yeah, I remember now. Marine Marauder is already designed to be a really mobile force and to strike aggressively. And Marine Marauder is one of those forces that if you build too many Reapers in the mid and late game, you're not exactly accomplishing something too new. You're already wanting to be far forward and aggressive in the mid and late game and keep the Zerg sort of coiled back and in a defensive posture. And plus it just directly interrupts with a lot of other stuff. I have no idea what my thoughts are if you were to go for just some Reapers against a Zerg player in the late game while you were going bio. Obviously it's helping here in this mech circumstance, but I can't see too much how this transition would pan out. I just have no data, which is one of the reasons why I asked for all you kind folks to send stuff. So again, there's there's no doubt going to be a lot more changes in the in Heart of the Swarm. There's no doubt going to be all sorts of weird craziness. We'll note that this Reaper stuff has been out for 1 day, and yet we can still clearly see some very useful transition techniques, ideas of managing our economy, things working, things not working, all sorts of good jazz. When we come back, I'm just going to briefly touch on some Terran vs. Terran. I don't think it's as interesting as the Terran vs. Protoss or Terran vs. Zerg situations, but figure we should probably talk about TVT. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Back in 3.